I am a lifelong. I was born in Klamath Falls, grew up near there. One of the things that I will say is that I am well aware that communication science says that you need to have a very catchy title, but I'm an economist, so give me a break. This is the best I can come up with. I also want to make it very clear. I am not here to talk to me. I'm here to give you information that I believe will be useful to you. And it's just not my belief, it is people who have been familiar with the information that I'm going to talk about, and they also say, Ernie, if you can, get out there and talk. And other people are trying to get this information out. Specifically here in Oregon, although I and others do this sort of thing across the United States and in other countries. The reason that I'm talking about the economics of climate change, just as an indicator, can any of you describe in scientific terms the difference between 1.5 degrees Celsius and 1.7 degrees Celsius in climate change? And not a hand has ever gone up. And I deal with this stuff every day, and I never put my hand up because I don't understand the science. It's really, really complicated. The economics is also really complicated, but we're all familiar with economic things. I mean, we all have to have income, we spend it, we know what property values are and the like. So we're somewhat familiar with the concepts. So my task is to try to take very complex science, very complex interactions between the climate and the economy, and put it into language that you all will speak after you leave here. That's my goal. If you have a question, let me know right then. So if I say something and it isn't clear, if I don't say something that you thought I should have said, or if you just, would you say that again? Because it really doesn't make sense to me the first time around. And I've had all of those responses in various places, and so I'm very familiar with it. It's all very comfortable. One of the things that will occur is that we are recording this, so if you have a question, I will repeat your question so the people on the camera can understand what we're talking about. Okay? Everybody? All right. This is a really good place to begin, I found. My guess is that if you aren't worried, you wouldn't be here. So let's build some common knowledge. Let me know what worries you, and by the end of this, I hope that I address it specifically. So why are you worried about climate change? Hands up. Yes. Run out of water. Okay, it's a big deal right here. Right. All right, I'm aware of that. I grew up outside of Klamath Falls. I know how that works. I now live outside of Eugene, so it's a very different place. But again, the water issue is a very important issue in the Willamette Basin. Another issue.
I worry for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Worry about children and great-grandchildren all the way down. I've gotten that every time. Yes?
I worry what's happening in Washington, D.C., and they're putting back all the rules and regulations that have kept water clean and helped keep air clean and pollution, and it's all going backwards.
Okay, so the concern expressed here is concern about what's happening in Washington, D.C., as some people seem to be abandoning regulations and efforts to try to improve water, maintain air quality, maintain a quality of life. Am I representing? And so maybe you can learn something in this economic presentation that will help you deal with that as best we can. You know, I can't come up with a better verb right there. Okay? Anything else? In the back.
I worry about as where people live globally, that there's even more need for migration because people have to move out of places that cannot sustain, and that just keeps increasing tensions wherever people go. We already have so much concern and infighting about that, and I can't imagine it getting better.
Okay. The concern is about the effect of climate change on migration and tensions around the world. And if I don't address that specifically, you come up and you whack me, because I intend to address that very, very directly. You had a question?
I actually had the same one as hers.
Okay, so we're back on to migration. Anything else? Right here.
Extreme weather events.
Extreme weather events. Absolutely. Have you had any of those here? Yeah? Sir?
I'm worried about my house burning down and or getting insurance for my house.
So house burning down, getting insurance, all of those are issues that are related to climate change. Again, if I don't address it, make certain that I do. Okay. Here's one of the reasons to worry. So again, we talk about the science of climate change and we're looking for scientific explanations and something very detailed. And it's something as vague as this. Heat. We all grew up as the Surgeon General gave the announcement that smoking is bad for your health. It even kills you, does other things before you die. And here we're talking about extreme events, heat. Whoops, went the wrong way. Every time that I've talked to an OLLI group, they're very, very concerned about this one. And the point here, this is research that came out at the end of last year. This is all really very new, from 2024. By the way, I will have citations at the bottom. I'm not going to go through them because it really destroys the whole presentation, but stuff is all cited wherever I can. But what they have found is that for a very long time we've regulated air quality looking at particulate matter, or PM, and then specifically PM 2.5, which is really teeny tiny particulate matter that has come out of the back of the exhaust pipes of automobiles and diesel. What we found is that the particulate matter coming out of wildfires is much, much, much more dangerous. It's much smaller, so it goes way down deep into your lungs and it doesn't come out. As I understand, I'm not the scientist, but that's my understanding. And as it gets in there, it can get into the brain. Whereas the other PM 2.5 doesn't do that quite so much. And so this is really kind of a stunner. This is where I have interacted with audiences around in different countries, and I don't know what to say. This whole climate change, it's just so hard to talk about it. And there's an awful lot of research, it's not mine, an awful lot of research that says there is a very, very heavily funded, well-constructed disinformation campaign out there to persuade people that, well, climate change doesn't exist. Well, if it does exist, humans didn't cause it. Well, if humans did cause it, it's not going to bother you, it's going to bother those other people. Or we had the question, the migration parts in other parts of the world. Well, if it does bother you, it's not going to be that bad. Or, and this is sort of the latest, it's going to be so bad that we really can't fix it. So go out and drive your Dodge Ram pickup anyhow. Just go do it, because we really can't do anything about it. So there's an awful lot of that. I don't know what to say. My goal is that you learn some things to say in this. If you don't, ask me. If you don't ask me now, or ask me later, because I actually have had this people, and it's the cliche. I was standing in the shower and I thought, what the hell did he say? Yeah, I need to go out and figure, what was the word? So, find out. Number one, you are not alone in being concerned, having worries. This map comes from research out of the Pew Research Center. Last year, 2 days ago, they released some new reports. This is estimated percent of adults who think that global warming is happening. The national average is 72%. It's 75% in Deschutes County. But really, people, how can 30% or 25% of the population not get it? Percent. of adults somewhat or very worried about global warming, and the average is 63. So quite a few people, even, it's only 70, 75%, but quite a few people from 75 down to 63 are not really worried about it. Part of that disinformation campaign, I think. Deschutes County is 69%. Global warming will harm future generations. Children all the way to great-grandchildren and the like. The national average is 71, it's 76% in Deschutes. So you all have had some extreme events. You all in Deschutes County are much more aware that this is happening, it's going to happen in the future. The number who say this is personally, where the this is protecting the environment for future generations. Very important, 67. Somewhat important, 25. You are not alone. These are different surveys. They come up with different numbers, but I think the general message here is you're not alone. There also is research that because of the disinformation, because it is science and it's really hard to understand, and we've always been kind of wary about science, that's why a lot of us went to study the arts, excuse me, but yeah. We don't go out and talk about it. Again, I'm hoping to give you some economics so you can get it. The research shows that people are very hesitant to talk. I'm saying get out there and talk. You have things to say. People, they have personally experienced the effects of global warming. It's 49% in the nation and it's 57% here. So get that. 43% of the people in Deschutes County think they've not been affected by it. And for me, this is the killer, so to speak. Global warming will harm them personally, a moderate or a great deal. 45%, more than half of the people think, not going to affect me. Nah, it's going to get them. It's going to get them down in the tropics, and we know that they are different from us anyhow. It's going to get them down in Florida along the East Coast with hurricanes. It's going to burn down LA, and who cares about them anyhow? This is stunning. The message that I have for you, if you take away one thing, you may not understand from the scientific perspective that it has harmed you and will harm you. I understand that's hard to handle. From an economic perspective, it is already harming you every day. And it will harm you a lot more in the future. That's the economic message here. The reason you haven't heard this, because apart from the disinformation, is that the economics are really hard. The political pressure on economists was really, remember when the scientists, if they spoke up, they were criticized as being, well, you're an advocate, you're not really a scientist, so you're not going to get funding anymore. Finally, scientists are speaking up. I'm going to talk about that. Economists always lagged behind that because you not only had the complex science, you had the complex economy as well. And so their models were very simple. They looked at one type of extreme event at a time, in one country at a time. They assumed that there was only one event in a year, and at the end of the year, everything was fine. There's a long history of that. Well, carbon dioxide incrementally goes up. Economies adjust incrementally all the time. Prices go up a little bit, people change their behaviors. Prices go down a little bit, people change their behaviors. That's what the economy does. And so it was easy to say it's carbon dioxide, the economy, who cares? Yeah, there'll be a price, but it's not going to be much. Right now, and this is in the last 12 months, the last 8 months actually, some really powerful economists have thrown that out the window. They turn it upside down. They're saying, we need to look at multiple types of extreme events. So you can have, in a country, you can have hurricanes, you can have heat, you can have droughts, you can have floods, you can have diseases, and they're all occurring, stacking on top of one another. So that's going to have multiple effects on the economy of that nation, and not only that, But one of the things we've learned is that flooding in China can affect us right here in Bend. So it's not just within a single country, it's across the globe now. The scientists are also telling us that as the temperature has increased, the climate is becoming more and more sensitive. The example that helps me understand that is that if you have a kid and the kid has a 99-degree Fahrenheit fever and it goes up a little bit, yeah, the kid sort of fusses a little bit. The kid has a 101-degree fever and it goes up a little bit, screaming. That's what's happening to the climate. So it's becoming more sensitive, it's getting broader, and we're seeing multiple effects all at once. And the effects persist for years. So we're now looking at, instead of little bitty effects on the economy, there are going to be huge effects on the economy. And that's why I say that's one of the primary messages I hope you can take away and express it in your own terms. So you're not alone. I don't know what to say. It's another reason why I'm here. So here are the core takeaways. Number one, this is not my language. This is the language that I understand communication experts say we ought to talk about. Don't talk about the science. Don't talk about degrees. Don't talk about even extreme weather. Okay? Talk about the harm to the people, the places, and things that we love. That brings it right into the insides of people. They can start to relate to what does that mean. Core takeaways? It's costing you a lot of money already. Core takeaways? Sorry?
Could you be specific?
I'll be back. I'll get to that. This woman wants me to be specific, so when I get really specific, you blame her, because I'm going to. Okay? Climate change acceleration, that's what I just talked about. Having a sick kid, that's what's happening there. Disruptions of the global economy. Those are the two reasons why, even if you wanted to pay attention to the economic costs of climate change, you wouldn't have heard very much about it. But now we do. It's real, it's here now. That's what you say. And no better place than Deschutes County to talk about that. And I'm going to get really specific in just a little bit. Here's annual global temperature relative to the baseline before industrial emissions. So we have back in the 1940s, and it's going up faster and faster, so that in 2024, for the first time, the global temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius. An awful lot of talk about that because we had that as a goal coming from the Accords in Paris. And now we're above that. The expectation was that even if we didn't do a very good job, we wouldn't exceed 1.5 until the middle of the century. And it's here right now, 25 years early. Oh, the disinformation campaign has told us that, well, scientists don't agree. You know, so back off. Don't even accept it, because scientists don't. If they can't agree, why should we be worried about it? They agree. I'm going to talk to you about research. This, by the way, comes from the American Academy for the Advancement of Science. This is the premier science organization in the United States. This isn't some wacko economist making the number up. Climate change is here now in Oregon. The heading on this is 385 U.S. counties. The summers are already 1.5 degrees warmer, and this was in 2023. And we're the darkest of the states. Who would have thought that Oregon would be one of the worst? Why? Anybody have an explanation? And if you heard me last night, you know, you can explain it if you want. Why? Global warming doesn't affect this very much. Doesn't affect this very much. By the way, I'm not the scientist, so bear with me. global warming affects the water an awful lot. All right? So we have an awful lot of water right there. We have had the blob, you may have heard about a heat wave in the ocean. Not in the atmosphere, but in the ocean. We're starting to see that. That's starting to influence the rain that comes in off of the ocean, the weather patterns that come off, and there we are. 20 years ago when I was working on this, it was easy to say, yeah, it's not going to affect us. Still here, it's not going to affect us. You just saw 55% of the people here in this county say it's not going to affect us. But it's here, folks. So, it's harming the people, places, and things. Here are some of the people that it harms. I already talked about what it does for dementia. But what about the kids? There is evolving research that says climate change, and in particular, this comes from research on wildfire smoke. Wildfire smoke really harms pregnant women, really harms the fetus. It really harms the brand new babies because the babies can't adjust to the heat, can't adjust to the smoke. You have direct injury, disease, and death coming from all of this. Mental health disorders. This is really scary in my view, because even 5 years ago there wasn't very much information on this, but because we're starting to see all of this now, research in the United States, research in other countries, we're starting to see an awful lot of mental health problems in the kids, because not only is grandma concerned and frightened, the kids are concerned. The kids are frightened. This is research. It's published last year. This is how scared some of the kids are. Now, can you remember when you were in high school? 16 to 25 years old, how easy would it have been for you to confess to somebody that you're having mental health problems? You know, we never talked about that. But these kids are. And my bet, you know, having a parent and seeing kids, the real number is a lot higher. The real number is up in the 90s is my guess. Because these kids are aware. These kids are really scared. And these kids are really angry. For the elderly that we love, we are, and we are so lovable as well. Same thing. Mental health disorders, the isolation. Think about it, when the smoke's here, you get the warning not to go outside. So you have an awful lot of elderly who are inside all alone. Portland, the 2021 heat wave, an awful lot of old folks stayed inside their houses. Because it's Oregon, because an awful lot of those people are poor, they didn't have air conditioning. So they're inside in a really hot room all alone. For a very long time, the law enforcement community has known, and the public safety community, more larger into the military, have known that when you have abnormally hot days, violence goes up a lot. It first of all goes up with spousal abuse and child abuse, and then it spills out into the streets, and somebody's really PO'd and the gun comes up and there you are. And so we're having a lot of abnormally hot days. We're going to see more of that. So it's violence directed at others, it's violence directed at themselves, because what do? I can't, this is a terrible thing. You know, I've been part of the generation that's imposing it on the children. I can't live with that. boom, gone. A lot of us care an awful lot about ecosystems, especially here in Oregon. This is the primary reason why Oregon's economy has grown in the last 40 years, is because of the ecosystem. People want to come here and live here and be productive here because it's such a great place to live. If you ever went to the coast 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you could not have avoided seeing this bird, common murre, all along the coast, everywhere. The last 5 years, I've not seen one. 2 years ago, this happened to the north of us, because they moved north because it's colder, because of heat, because the water is too hot. 4 million died, and they ain't coming back. And it's not just them, it's insects, it's birds. There are a lot of reasons why bird populations are down, and bird populations are down more than half. Butterfly populations are down more than half. A lot of reasons. But the people who study this tell me climate change has an awful lot to do with it. You have birds getting a signal about the temperature, so I better go north. They get up north, nothing to eat. That's the things that we love. This is a map prepared by EPA 10 years ago. It shows where do we expect to have, without CC, without climate change, where do we expect to see we will continue to have streams, rivers and streams, with water cold enough to support cold water fish, salmon, steelhead, trout, basically. And Oregon's blue. A little bit over by Boise, but who cares? We would expect that Oregon would continue to have very cold water in the streams, but with climate change, and this is 10 years ago, we know it's a lot worse than this now, except for the crest of the Cascades, it's all red. Basically, that says that if we care about salmon, forget it. They're toast, so to speak. This is what we are doing to the things that we love. And it's complicated. If you wanted to talk to your neighbors about climate change, how many of you would have started talking about, the water temperature in the stream? But it's there. And here's another thing that I think an awful lot of Oregonians take pride in, is that we are concerned about our communities. And so, the frontline communities that are taking it on the chin first. This comes from a research group at the University of Washington last year. It's called the Climate Impacts Group. Right there. Right there. How many people that you know or are aware of who were unable to work when it was so smoky around here? We were at Worley Brewing last night. And what I've heard talking to the people who own that is that they shut down that outside veranda out there. What's the point? They told the bands to go home. Don't come. More than that, what we see is that the people who otherwise would come to Deschutes County to buy a second home, maybe, a lot of them aren't coming anymore. The last couple of years with the smoke. If they thought that they could come here and invite their grandkids to come, they tell the grandkids, stay home. Don't come. And oh, by the way, sorry to call you, but your grandpa's in the hospital. All of that has an impact on the economy here, because climate change is harming the things that we love. Fourth thing to say, the cost for every Oregonian now. It's here. It's costing you money. You may think of, does climate change affect you, because you think about the things of climate change. But in terms of how those things affect the economy, it's affecting you every day. It affects you. And I think you probably, from my experience talking to groups like this, you are aware of every one of those. If you think about it, you can see that, every one of them. This is where the economics presentations gets really boring because it's an awful lot of statements. Cost of living. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Cost of living for insurance, damage to the home directly, cooling costs. What did I hear this morning? Used to be 4 days a year that you needed to use air conditioning here, and now it's more than 2 weeks a year. Okay. It's not just human diseases. It's your pets, livestock, fish, wildlife. Concern about what's happening in Washington, D.C. One of the things is the quality of life, people being displaced, inequities. So it's not just climate change, and how hot it's going to be and how many fires. It's our society. One of the metaphors that I've heard that I think works with some groups is climate change is trying to choke us, trying to choke the life out of our bodies. Personal bodies, but also our society and everything else. And it's just squeezing harder and harder. And I could, 4 slides was enough, okay? But I could have kept going. So, in Ollie and Eugene, they're required to have a break. We're done. Okay. Core takeaways. After the break, we come back. Here are the core takeaways. It's here now, folks. 15,000 scientists in 2023 supported a statement where the lead author was Bill Ripple from Oregon State University. And it says this is what's happening. And they finished up with this statement. We warn you. We're scientists warning you. And nobody paid attention. Because it's science. I hope that if you start to warn people that this is going to cost people, your neighbors, your family, your community leaders, it's going to cost us an awful lot of money for insurance to begin with, because we can all see that, but also the quality of life, the incomes, cost of living, the people start to pay attention. That's why I'm here. It's already costing you a lot. So let's look at that. Last year, well, a little bit of history. In 2009, I formed a team of economists. We had about 20, 25. We did the very first subnational estimate of the cost climate change will impose. We looked at Oregon, Washington, and New Mexico because the leaders of the legislatures in those 3 states asked us to do that. I personally repeated the exercise in 2018. Last year, I was able to secure funding to form a new team here in Oregon of economists to look at exactly this issue. What is the cost to Oregonians of climate change? Because I and my colleagues recognize that economic analysis says, well, here's what the global cost is going to be by 2100. Who cares? Or it says, here's the global cost. It's going to be however many trillions. Who knows what that means? Let's talk about Oregonians, Oregonian families, Oregonian workers, Oregonian households. How much does it cost them? we came up with estimates for these 5 things. So now, the person wanted to be specific, going to get specific. Wildfires. We all hear when there is a fire how much it's going to cost, the suppression cost. And in 2018, it's hard to get the data. We were able to get data for 2018. Here was what the federal suppression cost is. But researchers out of Bozeman, having looked at fires around the West, are saying the suppression cost is about 10% of the total cost coming from that fire, not even paying attention to the smoke. It's the cleanup cost, the damage, the houses that burn. Last year, the fences that burned. Last year, the number of livestock that burned in Eastern Oregon. I was stuck on Highway 58 yesterday trying to come up over the Willamette Pass because they were trying to fix a landslide area. I don't know for sure, but I would almost bet that the reason they're doing that is that they expect to have more heavy rainfall. And that landslide, if it comes down, it's going to take that road out for months. So let's get it cleaned up now. So this is the damage and the cleanup. You divide by the number of households in this state, that's $4,000 a household, just from the wildfires. This is data for 2023, published by the Oregon Health Authority last year. This is their graph. The number of days in 2023 where you had smoke and high heat. And Deschutes is number 1. Hooray. Now, what does that smoke do economically? We know that some workers can't work. We know that some people don't come over to Deschutes County and buy stuff, so incomes go down. We know that you might have, the grocery wholesaler might not come over every other day. Might come over every 4 days, every week. So some costs are going to go up. If you wanted to say, gee, it's really, really, really smoky, I'm going to go out and buy an air purifier to put in my house, you go down and, gee, we're all sold out. But if you pay me a little extra, I can get you one. Costs go up. And I want to make it very clear. When I talk about economic harm, I talk about 3 things. Income, cost of living, and quality of life. Quality of life, as I said, is especially important in Oregon. People decide to live where they want to live. When that smoke comes in and you are an old person and you can't get out, it has reduced your quality of life. When your family has to start worrying, gee, is grandma going to get by okay? She had a hard time last year. Is she going to get by okay this year? That's a reduction in your quality of life. That has value, that has importance, economic importance. The kids can't come over, that harms you economically. It's not money, but is very real economic harm. 44 days. Over the years, economists, to try to get an understanding of this non-monetary harm from different things, but specifically with respect to wildfire smoke, they went and they did surveys and they asked people in households, how much would you pay to not have a day of smoke? And converted to 2024 dollars, it's $450 per day. What? How could it be that much? Grandpa and grandma die. Little baby Susan gets asthma. My cafe shuts down because nobody's there. My kids can't go to school, So I have to go leave my work to go take care of them, or I have to hire somebody to take care of them. People started to think about all of that, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and it adds up to $450 a day. So we have 44 days at $450 a day. $2023 on average cost your household $20,000. Not money. But I've heard some people say that was a really crummy year. And you know what? 2024 is even worse. You know what? Maybe it's going to be worse next year too. Honey, why don't we go move? So what I've read is that the hospitality industry has started to recognize that bookings, people wanting to come to Deschutes County to recreate, and hey, who doesn't, are down more than 10%. Pretty soon that reduces the property value of your house. Pretty soon that maybe increases your taxes, because how do you make up for what other people are no longer going to pay? $20,000. Research that was completed last year, I don't have a citation on that one. Research completed last year, looked across the West, looked at the correlation between smoke and deaths, and concluded that every year for the last decade, on average, wildfire smoke has killed 411 Oregonians per year. Now, none of you are saying it, but I bet some of you are saying, what? Because when I've been in other places and said that, no way, 400, we know about that. But several months ago, I actually went in to have an echocardiogram done, and as I'm talking to the technician working on my heart, I say, well, you know, hey, by the way, he says, what do you do? And so I threw this out there, because I can't help myself, I'm an economist. I said, and you know, it's 411. He said, oh, I bet it's twice that. Because when we have a smoky day here at Oregon Cardiologist at Riverbend Hospital in Eugene, we are flooded with people who are not well. They are not going to live. So I bet it's higher than that. Economists try to put some value on killing people. And the average is about 3,000. You take that 411 and you divide it across all of the Oregon population, the number of households, 1.7 million households, it's $3,000 per year on average. That's because some households, it's astronomical. Your household, you got by, who cares? Until next year.
Talk to me just a little bit more about that one. I'm a little, you take the number of deaths.
Okay. Okay. We're going to get into the specifics of economics now. For a very long time, we have realized that talking about the value of human life is something we don't want to do. But we also, and this is especially true when you talk about seatbelts. We're all old enough to remember when you had cars without seatbelts, and suddenly you had, you know, the National Highway Transportation System, whatever, talking about seatbelts. I can remember when my father took me down to Sears in Klamath Falls. We bought a seatbelt, we took back home, and we put it in the car. Isn't this glorious? And I remember that our neighbor said, what a stupid thing, you're never going to have an accident. What's the probability? Until his kid died the next year in a car wreck. So every one of us pays for seatbelts to prevent the possibility of death. Every one of us pays for bright headlights, tail lights, sensors all around the car, looking up in the future and looking what's behind you and whatnot. Thousands and thousands of dollars. If you go on an airplane, we've spent millions and millions of dollars after that plane and the side of the plane blew out over Portland. Okay, we spend an awful lot of money to make sure that if that happens again, and the probability is teeny, that it isn't going to happen again. We spend on average in the United States about $13 million to prevent the risk, the probability of one death. We don't know who it's going to be, but just to reduce the risk. So you take 411, you multiply it by 13 million, you divide by 1.7 million households, and you get $3,000 per household. If my iPhone is accurate. Heat wave, 2021. The official records say that 102 people died because of heat. But research that was conducted about the same time up in Seattle, or was very much the same, said that if you work in a hospital, there isn't a checkoff box to say killed by heat. There's one for heart attack, one for, different things, but not for heat. But if you actually go back and try to correlate this hospital, this, what happened with the heat here and here and here, it multiplies 3.5. So instead of 100, we, the economists, say it's reasonable to expect that it was at least 350. And there are some epidemiologists who say that it should be 1,000. And maybe we will change our records keeping. You do the same exercise, 13 million. Most of those people were in Multnomah County, and that's about $13,000 on average per household in Multnomah County. They lived through an awful lot of people dying. It's pretty easy, in my experience, to go into Portland and find somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. Again, mostly the frontline folks, people of color, lower income, working outdoors. To some extent, the women and fetuses, small child. Core takeaways, the cost will jump higher for those two reasons. I hope you take away those two reasons. Think about the child at 99 degrees Fahrenheit of fever and a child with 101 degrees fever. Very, very different. We are getting up to the 101 degree fever. And the scientists are telling us it's going to get worse. And here I'm going to talk to you about how worse is it going to get. Two weeks ago, an interview and a post online from an executive of the Allianz Insurance Corporation, one of the largest in Switzerland. And Switzerland is really the core of the insurance industry. And he says, you start to think about it. What the scientists are telling us. So the scientists are telling us it's going to get worse. And what I didn't talk about before, but I'm going to talk about now, is that scientists are telling us that there are these tipping points. That if you make it hot enough, the climate is going to change so much that something that an ecosystem that exists like this is going to end up like that. And it isn't going to go back. So we are going to see the ice in the Arctic, gone. We're going to see ice in Greenland, gone. And when that happens, the forest in the Amazon basin turns to grass. We are looking at a very real risk, as I understand it, that the current in the oceans go all around the world. They carry warm water from the tropics up the east coast of North America and deliver it to the top of Europe. That's why Europe exists as an economy. Otherwise, it would be really cold. We don't really hear very much about the economy of Iceland. If that changes, Europe, in effect, for a large part of the year becomes uninhabitable from cold because you don't have hot water coming up and alleviating the cold. The research that I understand says at 1.5 degrees Celsius, or maybe a little bit more, there are 8 tipping points. And we already may have crossed some of them. Hard to measure. This is really complex stuff. And if one of them tips, it could cascade, it could bring down even more. So instead of incremental carbon dioxide, the temperature gets a little warm. Yeah, it's getting warmer faster. That's what that bar chart showed. No, it's going to jump. And that's the term they use. It's going to jump. And maybe it jumps 8 times. So back to this insurance executive. He says,
What are the tipping points you're talking about for the ecosystem, wildfire, flood?
well, what you might see, for example, if we lose the ice in the north, and just in the last couple of years, they're really talking seriously about maybe we lose it at Antarctica. Then in terms of the sensitivity of global temperature per ton of carbon dioxide, instead of being, we'll get this much increase in temperature for this much carbon dioxide, we're going to get this much increase in temperature for this much, the next unit of carbon dioxide. And when we get this much, then this part of the climate or the ecosystem someplace else changes. And now it just one on top of another. So the insurance executive says, think about what we already see. We're already seeing the incidence of hurricanes, the severity. If we look at our past, we have no historical record of that. And now think about wildfires. We have no historical record of that. We've all grown up in a world, basically since World War II, where tomorrow really looks an awful lot like yesterday. So we could use the data from yesterday to predict what tomorrow is going to be. Climate change changes that. It's not possible. And so what he's saying is that we have an insurance industry built on yesterday. When it starts to look forward, it says, we're not going to insure houses in LA anymore. We're not going to insure your house in Eastern Oregon anymore. We're not going to offer health insurance for old people in Portland anymore. So he's starting to say that if it was a little bit worse, which is with the original prescriptions, yeah, we could handle that. We love increasing your premiums, really do. But now they're saying we can't increase the premiums enough to cover it. So we're going to pull out. And you have read about the insurance companies pulling out of wildfire zones in California, coming to Oregon. I did a presentation about 18 months ago in Waldport. You know where Waldport is? And a woman said, that happens here in Waldport. Waldport? You don't have fires? Yeah, we have fires in Waldport last 2 years. Sure. And the insurance company are saying, we're out of here. So this insurance executive says, we've already seen this here, here, and here. And now we're seeing the scientists saying, we're on the brink of catastrophe. So we are now in the insurance industry saying, how high can we raise the premiums, how fast? And when we look at that, we have to start thinking this is going to happen. That we will no longer have a world where we insure all of these investments in your home or in a crop. And think about why we have insurance. Where did it come from? It came out of the 1600s, 1700s as you started to have enough rich people in London who are saying, how can I get even richer? Well, somebody comes and they want me to invest in maybe going to East Africa and exploiting whatever, bananas, whatever they wanted to do. But gee, that's kind of risky, so I need to get some insurance to make sure I get my money back. And that's how the insurance industry evolved. He is saying that we could see by the middle of this century, insurance no longer exists on home mortgages, it no longer exists on infrastructure, it no longer exists on crops, crop insurance, it no longer exists on industry, so industry investment going to disappear. Public buildings. And when you don't have insurance, we don't know what to do because we've had capitalism because we've had insurance. And so he says, capitalism will die. We will no longer have people making investments to grow the economy. I have to look at that and say, gee, smart guy, sort of makes an awful lot of sense. Whew, pretty scary. And I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to say, here are some messages to take away as you talk to people. No better place than Deschutes County to talk to your neighbors or your family and say, you know about the insurance here? We ought to be really concerned that we will no longer have insurance on home mortgages. And if we don't have that, what happens to the value of the property that I was going to leave to the grandkids? People say, oh yeah, I'll get that. Well, then you can talk about the other things. This is research published in 2024. It comes out of something called the Potsdam, Germany, Potsdam Institute on Climate Impact Research. This is one of the premier research organizations in the world. They say we already have enough greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that we are seeing reductions in income. Now, it's really hard to see. You all weren't saying, yeah, I know I've seen, Billy Bob lost income from the wildfire smoke, or, Sally Smith lost income from, wasn't able to rent the B&B, whatever. But it's there, and economists who are skilled are starting to quantify this. So they are saying by the middle of the century, 2050, you will see a 19% reduction in income. 19. And so the economists that I worked with last year, we said, okay, well, let's put that in terms that people today will understand. And a 19% reduction in income today is $12,000 per person. And I understand a lot of specifics. How many of you know or subscribe to Consumer Reports? Okay. They have, as part of their charter, organizational charter, concern about consumers. Okay, not corporations, consumers. So as I understand it, their board at some point said, we need to say something about climate change. What's it going to do to our target concern? So they hired one of the leading consulting firms on this issue. Go out and tell us what it's going to cost a newborn child. They looked at either 5 or 6 things. Reductions in income, increases in cost of living, so increases in the cost of food, reductions in property values and the income from property values. They didn't look at everything. They didn't look at wildfire smoke. They didn't look at deaths. They looked just at income, cost of living. A child born today, as an adult, will see a reduction in income plus an increase in living costs of $1 million, and probably higher than that. So you know people who have grandkids, you know people who have kids who are about to have kids. That's what they're looking at. So I'm not concerned about grandkids and storms. As an economist, I'm concerned about grandkids and, holy crap, how are they going to make it? Wildfire smoke, I talked about 411. The prediction in that analysis in 2024 is that we will have 1,200 per year by the middle of the century. It's going to keep going up. How many of you know, anybody know what an actuary is? Tell the group.
It's somebody who works in the insurance industry who determines risk.
Determines risk. These are the pros. These are the people out of the 1600s who came and helped the investors and the borrowers decide what the risk is. Been doing it for a long time. an organization called the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries for the UK. This is not some fly-by-night group. They said what economists have been doing in the past by assuming it's always going to be incremental, that is, quote, precisely wrong. What we need to do, think about when you get your car insurance. You get your car insurance, they don't calculate how many times you're going to get a scratch on the door, you're going to have to pay for that. They look at what is the worst. The worst is that you drive a car big enough that you could kill 10 people. That's why your premium's so big. If you drove a smaller car, it wouldn't be so big. They said if you look at what the scientists have said, we're on the verge of a catastrophe. We're talking about tipping points. This is the only study that I know that explicitly looks at the tipping points. And this was January 18th of this year. They published this. This leads into that statement by the executive out of the insurance company. So that industry is paying an awful lot of attention to this. There's a 50% probability that the temperature will be up 3 degrees Celsius in 25 years. Not 1.5, not 1.7, not 2, 3. And at 3, all bets are off. And they are saying, coming back to migration, talked about violence. They say we ought to anticipate 4 billion climate-related deaths. It isn't that the climate itself is going to kill these people, but the climate is going to kill a lot of folks. But it's also going to make living conditions so bad that you are going to start to see prolonged periods of extreme violence. And that's how you get to maybe 4 billion people dying. Now, real challenge is, well, hallelujah. And I hear people saying this. Take him and gone, that means there's more for me. Yeah. There are people out there who say that. But they really aren't paying an awful lot of attention to there's an awful lot in the world that you benefit from, and it's not going to be there anymore. Now, do I personally think that there is overpopulation that this world cannot sustain? That's what the science tells me. But having climate-related things kill 4 billion people and think that it's not going to affect my lifestyle in Bend? Poppycock. Because the actuary said, well, let's talk about what it really is going to do to the economy. And what they're saying is that we are going to lose 1/2 of the economy. GDP is gross domestic product. It's the value of the goods and services that humans produce, not ecosystems, but humans. We're going to lose half of it. And I keep getting the question, what does that, half of the economy, what does that mean? What are we going to do? I don't have an answer for that. It's really hard for me to wrap my head around what half of the economy going away means. But I grew up having to go out and water the carrots and the corn and the like and grow our food because that's how my family survived. And so I'm starting to talk about my son, yeah, you better start paying attention to growing your own food. That sort of thing. These are some of the hard numbers. The next part of it is that people want to ask, what do we do? And I don't have a great answer. I don't know anybody that has a great answer. I have some things that I would like for me to think about, and I'm suggesting that you might want to think about. Let's go back to the metaphor. It is something that is choking us. And it's choking us more and more and more. Well, the options that you have then are to try to do what you can to relax the hands around your throat. The other thing that you can do is to try to build up the muscles in your throat so that you are more resilient. Those are the two things that economists talk about. One of the great successes, I believe, of the oil and gas industry is to come up with, out of the marketing industry, come up with a phrase, what is your carbon footprint? They did that, as I understand it, to try to put the blame on us. It's my fault that climate is going up. They're not responsible for it. All of the 8 billion people are making the decision to destroy the planet. They have nothing to do with it. I think they have an awful lot to do with it. I think until we start to have global actions with the United States as a participant rather than an impediment, that temperature is going to skyrocket in the next few years, and everything, we're on the brink of a catastrophe. We're beyond the brink of a catastrophe. So I don't think that there's an awful lot I can do to try to change that global dynamic. There are some things that I can do here. I have worked for a long time with communities in different countries, in developing countries, and I helped them oppose the oil industry. The oil industry wants to come in, they're telling us they're going to have wonderful things, everybody's going to be rich. But Ernie, would you help us understand what the economic implications are of the destruction of the ecosystem? The fisheries are going to disappear, the forest is going to disappear. And so I would help them reach the conclusion, tell the oil industry no. And then I would go to the grocery store and get in a car that burns oil. And I said, I can't do that. So I bought an EV, even though it was really expensive. If you can do that, that's one thing you can do to relax the hands. If you can put solar on your house, relax the hands. If you can convince the Oregon legislature to do more. 2 weeks ago, I testified in Salem on behalf of what's called the Oregon Climate Superfund Bill. Superfund is, we've got some pollution out here, the polluter pays to clean it up. Not the community, the polluter pays. People thought that bill was going to pass, and about 10 days ago, disappeared. If you can talk to legislators and say, 2026, get that bill in place so that we don't have to pay to clean up the mess from that pollution. Maybe that's something you can do. What I decided I can do is I can talk to groups because I have access to information. If there were 25 economists out there able to do this, I'd say, okay, I'm going to go take care of the cat and the dog. But there aren't. So that's why I'm here. This is something I can do. If you can talk to your church group, if you can talk to your OLLI group, if you can talk to whatever, help them understand the economics. It comes right into your house. The second thing is, what can you do to make yourself stronger? As I understand the research, and I'm not an expert on this, but one of the things that the research says is we are stronger together in fighting, whether it's heat, smoke, disease, what have you. There is, again, a real tendency, if it's about science, we don't talk about it, but we can talk about it if it's economics. What's going to cause, do you know about the price of eggs? So we're used to talking about economics. We can do that now. Find the words that work for you. Help people understand. Do not, please, hide. Get more information. I'm going to offer to you, if you go into the shower and say, what the heck did he say? Contact me. Ruby or Judy knows how to contact me. Contact me and I'll try to help you. That's what I can do. Once you have the information, you're getting on top of it, and that's why you're here. Don't go into the closet and keep it to yourself. Share it. If Ollie would like me to come back, you would like to invite your family, your neighbors, for me to come back and talk to them, I'll come. Or I'll try to find another economist who can do it. We have to get out of the closet, number one. The research published last week, specifically with respect to wildfire smoke, says if it's a little bit of smoke, people kind of, they talk to their neighbors, they talk to the family. How you doing? You doing okay? Yeah. If it's really bad smoke, they don't talk to their neighbors. They start to isolate themselves. They are not stronger together. Try to build a community within OLLI, within your neighborhood, within Bend, within Deschutes County, wherever, that if it gets really bad, you really start to figure out how you're doing. What can we do to fix it? How can we survive? And that's coming from the people who have done the research, an awful lot of it in California, and who cares about them? But it's done in California, and the communities where this got really bad, the communities started to separate. So the conclusion? I believe repetition is a great teacher. It's boring, but it's a great teacher. Use this language is my recommendation. Help people understand. When wildfires kill everybody, kill 100 or 400 people, or kill up to 1,200 people, those are real costs for people. Or if you can't get out of the house because it's so smoky, 44 days. By the way, that was one of the lowest acreages burned in decades, 2023. It wasn't a bad fire here. And understand, this is why it's so important right now on the economy. Two things going on. Remember the kid with 101 fever. And remember that flooding in China. I mean, what a great thing that we had a pandemic. What a great thing that we had a pandemic to teach us about global supply chains and what happens when those are disrupted. It affected me in Eugene. I expect it affected you. Your economic well-being went down. Some people in your community lost jobs, because the stuff wasn't going back and forth across the oceans. Cost of living went up for some things, and your quality of life went down. So we have something to refer to, disruptions of the global economy. Thank you. I really appreciate it.